2015 Audi A4, and today I'm going to show you its exterior features and interior features, and then I'm going to take it for a drive. Let's start with the dimensions of this car. The car is 185.1 inches long, placing it squarely in the small luxury sedan segment, and we have a wheelbase of 110.6 inches. At the front, the car is 71.9 inches wide. As usual, Audi has done an excellent job with the headlights and taillights. These are fully LED, LED turn signal, LED daytime running light, which has a very nice shape, and we also have LED main LED lights for nighttime use. I think that these headlights help to make this car still look like a modern car, even though it's coming up on 4 years old. We have, again, very nice LED tail lights. Fully LED, I think they do an excellent job at making these look very modern and cool. I think Audi is always on top of their headlight and taillight game. We've got some very interesting geometry in here, giving it a little bit softer look from the LEDs. And then this piece that runs along here is kind of dispersing the light. I really like the look of these taillights, especially at night. They look really cool. Let's go ahead and talk about the exterior build quality. Overall, I am very impressed. Audi always does a good job, and they certainly did a good job with this car. Coming down the side, we have almost identical gaps for in between the doors. 1, 2, 3. These all look really good. Especially, they've done a good job with this chrome trim fitting around the edges. This is something that a lot of manufacturers have trim around the edges, but the Audi always does a good job making sure it all lines up. Obviously, very tight with the bumper. That's bare minimum. That's to be expected. Coming around the trunk, larger gap at the bottom, which is typical, but coming back, it is so symmetric on both sides. And this car has never had its panels like redone or refitted, or any of these panels never been taken off and repainted. And this car is almost 5 years old, and it still looks great. This is awesome. Coming down the other side, look at this. We still got great fitment on the chrome trim and the 3 doors. These are identical to each other and identical to the other side. Audi have done a really good job. Also, coming along the hood, if you just run your finger along this whole crack, it's the same width, the whole length. That's really cool. And then they do this thing which really tidies up the look, hangs out just a little bit over the headlight. So this gives it a really aggressive, kind of mean, sporty look. Also, this tapered to a little point here on either side of the grille. This looks really cool. This car has the optional RS design rims. They are 18 by 8 inches, and they are clad in 245/40 tires. These are winter tires, but it does come from the factory with either all-season or summer performance tires. This car has a manually operated tailgate, so we'll just go ahead and open it up here. Inside the trunk, we have 12.4 cubic feet of volume, and the height inside here is very low, but it seems to extend quite far back, so it gives an illusion of a very large trunk for a car this size. We have in here this little panel. You can pull it away for storage, and then, well, I don't know if that's really what it's for. And on the other side, we have a little cargo net. Coming underneath, we do have a spare tire. Check this out. Remember I said this car had 18-inch wheels? Well, the spare tire is 19-inch. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's just something I've never seen before. That's really funny. Almost always the spare tire is smaller than the regular tires. All right, let's go ahead and pop the hood, see what's cooking under here. Yes, we have got Audi's EA888 Generation 2 motor here. This is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that's good for 220 horsepower at 4,450 RPM. That's quite low, actually. That's because the turbo on this car is very small and actually chokes it off at higher RPM. So it makes less power above there. It makes 258 pound-feet of torque all the way down at 1,500 RPM, which is quite impressive. Something very unique about this engine is that this is one of just a handful of Audi models that were offered with E85 ethanol flex fuel compatibility from the factory. So this car does have a flex fuel sensor. You can fill it with ethanol, and it'll adjust the tune on the engine accordingly for the different octane. This engine is mated to Audi's 8-speed Tiptronic transmission and quattro all-wheel drive. And the Audi says it'll do 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds, which by today's standards, yeah, that's a little bit sluggish for a car like this, but certainly gets the job done. And at the time that this car came out, that was perfectly reasonable for a four-cylinder luxury car. The EPA rates this thing at 23 miles per gallon city, 31 on the highway for a combined of 25. Now let's go ahead and check out the interior, and I'm going to go ahead and start it up. This car has a very nicely crafted interior with a very unique modern design. Let's go ahead and start with the seats. The seats in this car are real leather, and they're very comfortable. This car is offered with a sport seat option. This does not have it, so they're not quite as supportive in the bolsters as the sport seats, and not even nearly as supportive as the seats that you might find in the S4. We have just the standard adjustments, forward, back, up and down on the bottom, and tilting forward and back. And then we have manually adjustable headrests at the top. So this car does have memory seats. You have 2 positions here. Something that I like here, to adjust the mirrors, Audi always has this nice knurled knob that you can use to adjust your mirrors. That's pretty cool. Coming over here, the headlight controls are up here on this knob. In here we have some very nice analog dials. I really like the look of these. They're backlit, so they look pretty cool. In the center here we have a little screen. This is certainly not nearly as advanced as what Audi has in their current cars, but it certainly gets the job done. We can look at speed and trip information. We can also look at the phone, and we can look at the media, what you're listening to. Other than that, that's about it. Actually, when you have navigation running, you can get what information about what lane to be in and where you're going to turn up there. This is controlled partially with a button on the end of the windshield wiper stock, which I think is kind of weird, and then also controlled with buttons on the steering wheel, which is more standard. I don't like how they mixed it up. You got buttons on the steering wheel, you got a button here. Doesn't make any sense to me. Moving over to the display, that's definitely something that gives this car a little bit more of a dated look than current Audis. This is certainly not as high resolution, but it's got all the features. It's got almost all the same features, so it has navigation, radio, phone connectivity, all of that. So it can do what you need to do. In the vehicle settings, here's something that's weird. So say you're on a snowy day, want to put up your windshield wipers to put them in the wiper service position. That's not something you can do in here. You have to go into the menu, into servicing and checks, and turn on the wiper service position. I think that's really weird that you have to go all the way in there. And it gets worse. When you come back to your car, you have to go back into this menu and deselect wiper service position to get your wipers to come back down. That's just pretty weird. Down here we have the Audi CD interface. This car has the standard Audi sound system, doesn't have any option, either of the 2 optional sound upgrades. Here, this vehicle does not have dynamic select, so this button is blank. All we got is traction control. You can turn it to sport mode or to completely off. Coming to the climate controls, this is all your standard buttons here, and again, the nice knurled knobs to control the temperature. That's separate for passenger and driver, which is nice. And we also have heated seats. And then coming down here, the gear selector is very nice for an automatic. There's a solid Solid feel when you put it into gear because it's actually mechanically connected to something. Not so much the parking brake, electric parking brake. We got the start-stop, engine start-stop button. That's pretty cool. I think it looks a lot better than some other engine start-stop buttons. I especially like the font on it. Very, very futuristic. Redundant volume control down here. This is a weird place for it. I don't understand why they decided to put the volume control down here. And then coming down here, this is the main knob to control the MMI system up here, the Audi mixed media interface. So, multimedia interface, sorry. So you have your buttons here to go to different menus on the edges, and then up on the screen there's a theme when you're in the different areas that everything has an option in one of the four corners. So these four buttons down here are mainly how you navigate around the menus, selecting the four different options. The knob itself is used to scroll around on the page, and then you also have a little joystick in the center of the knob, which you can't use to move around on the page, but what you can do when you're on the navigation screen, you can use that to launch your missile at the target. Sun visors in this car flip down forward. They're a decent size. They're pretty decent size. They do a really good job blocking out sun, especially because they're not that big, and very, very solid and sturdy. And we got full covers. Look at that. Stepping into the back seat here, it's really not too bad considering the exterior size of this car. I have enough leg room. I'm 6'1". I left the front seat in the same position that I was using it in. I think leg room, I mean, it's close, it's almost touching, but for a car of this size, this is pretty spectacular. This is as good as it gets. Headroom is also, it's a little tight, but we do have a nice indentation up here. So if you have your head a little further, I mean, if you're leaning forward, you might hit, but if you have your head further back, there's a nice indentation here to give you a little bit more room. We do have adjustable headrests up here. Also, I always like cars that have a nice fold-out center console. This one is pretty solid, and we got some very nice pop-out cup holders. Look at that. So these ones are kind of flimsy, I'll be honest. I wouldn't trust any drink unless it had a pretty tight lid, but these are pretty unique looking, and they work fairly well. We can also get in here. This is where the optional first aid kit would be. They would store it in this little tray here. We also have separate climate control vents for the rear. These ones do have adjustable fan speed and a little indicator that goes from red to blue, but we don't have actual separate automatic zone like we might have in a A6 or an A8. And then down here we've got the standard 12-volt power outlet. All right, let's talk about quality. Oh, that's solid. Pretty nice. Starting with the leather in this car. This car is coming up on 4 years old at this point. The leather has held up exceptionally well. Still very smooth. I think this is, I mean, at the time that this car came out, this was right up there with the best in entry-level luxury car leather options. This is pretty nice. We have in this car this patterned aluminum trim all the way around. There was also wood trim and carbon fiber trim available on the S4. Starting with these window controls, these are very, very nice, especially considering that this is an entry-level luxury car. You often notice a difference in just all of the buttons in the car when you step from the lowest model luxury car up to the mid model. So for example, for Audi, from A4 to A6, not so much in this car. The general quality of buttons is really good. We have a nice, really nice feel to these. Again, I love that all the knobs are knurled. That's always a nice touch. They're not actually aluminum, they are plastic, but they feel very solid. Now I absolutely love the feeling of the steering wheel. Just the way it's contoured here, and the way they have a little place for you to put your thumb in. It just feels really comfortable, and just feels really high quality. The buttons on here, we have little knobs to twist to adjust what's up on the screen here. You can also adjust the volume with here. These turn very well. These are knurled but plastic. Something I don't like as much, the steering column is very cheap plastic, and you can definitely rattle it around if you wanted to. So that's not as nice. Windshield wipers and turn signal stalks are both feel pretty solid compared to some other cars I've driven. The climate control vents are also decently solid. All these buttons down here have a great feel to them. The climate control vents are especially nice. I really like the click of these. Also knurled. We got a nice shiny black finish here up on the CD player, and down here by the MMI controls. I think this is pretty nice. They don't lather it on up and down the whole thing where you're gonna get a bunch of fingerprints on it. It's just used in moderation. I like that. This plastic here that all of these buttons are set in, all of this area, is very nice. Not going anywhere. This is very solid. Okay, let's talk about the soft touch plastics. So we have up in here, all of this is synthetic. Of course, there's not real leather up on top of the dashboard. The feel of it is very close to real leather compared to some other even much higher end luxury cars that I've been in. This stuff they've done a really good job with this stuff. It's not rattly or anything, but it's not super solid, but it feels really good. And you could easily, I mean, no, you're not gonna mistake it for real leather, but you could easily think that this was some kind of faux leather as opposed to just plastic. This is really nice stuff. Then my biggest complaint is probably this. We have silver trim all around here where the gauges are set up here. This definitely feels very cheap, and you can get some serious creaking action out of these guys here. So I would say, with the exception of this plastic piece around here, the interior quality of this car is exceptional for something at this price point. All right, now I'm driving the Audi A4. This car has a really nice ride. I think it's a really good balance between a sporty setup and a luxurious setup. And I think that really was where this car lined up when it was new, right? The BMW 3 Series had a little bit more sporty tuning all around, and the Mercedes C-Class had a little bit more luxurious. And this car kind of falls in the middle, and I really like it. So going over bumps, you really don't feel too much. It's a pretty smooth ride, and going around corners, it's really not too bad either. So I think it's a great balance. It's very quiet in here. Even with these snow tires on, which make a lot more noise than a standard tire would, it's very quiet in here as we get up to speed. Even on rougher roads, the cabin stays very insulated. Wind noise is very minimal. There's no leaking around any of the doors or anything. Overall, this is a very refined cabin for a car at this price point and in this class. I'm very impressed with it. Yeah, so going over some bumps here, you feel them, but it's much more detached than you would be in like a BMW 3 Series. Another thing I really like is the steering feel. This car has a fairly heavy steering, which I think makes it feel a little bit sportier, and it also you can really feel what the road is doing underneath you in a way that you wouldn't on a Mercedes C-Class. So it's a sportier steering feel, but again, it's not really heavy or anything. It's just a very solid feeling steering. I really enjoy it. think that with this car's good highway gas mileage, this could be a really good highway cruiser, and it's definitely got enough handling chops to have some serious fun on the back roads. There's definitely a little bit of body roll, but it is what it is, and the car stays tremendously well balanced throughout corners and during heavy acceleration or braking. Overall, I think that this car really combines the best features the balance between luxury and sport better than any car in its class. So if you're thinking about buying, especially if you're thinking about buying one of this previous generation, I think you really can't go wrong with the Audi. It's got a more reliable motor than the BMW or the Mercedes, and overall, just I think it has aged better, and I think it still passes as a modern car in many ways that the other two don't. So it's a good choice.